Hey y'all, what's up? It's John with Superfly, BeSuperfly, as well as breakintoweb.com, here with a tutorial here on of some floating stuff that I had to do for a project. So I was working on this project last night where you have this larger, you have a section, and then you have two columns here, and this column looks to be probably 75%. This one's about 50%. So that's more than 100%, and so by default they weren't overlapping like this. They were actually stacking because, and we'll go through that. And then here's a couple more examples down here for this financial planning and for this retirement plan as one. And then you can see if I go down to mobile, then I'm stacking them and still kind of keeping the floating thing kind of over them a little bit. And so there might be better ways to do this, but I'm just going to show how I did this and what my approach was initially and how I had to change my approach to, our approach. The page is called Our Approach. I'm talking about approach to do this. So here I have I have a section here that has a background color on it, and it just has an ID of floating. And then I have a row here that all I've done is I've set a background for the first column, white, and which gives it, that's what's giving it that color there. And then I gave some padding to that first column one, custom padding of 5%. And then under advanced, I gave this whole row an ID of floating row. And then my first column, I gave it floating text. And then this one, I gave it floating image over here. And that's where we are to start off this tutorial. So by default, that gives you this right here. And of course, if you go in here, it'll do that. That's just native Divi happening there. So initially I thought, okay, right now, this column is 47.25. This one's 47.25. I want this guy. I want this guy though, instead of being 47, I want it to be more like 75. But you'll see when I put 75, actually if I put in anything over 47, if I go to 48, it's just going to stack because you're going over 100%. This 47% plus its 5 margin right is like 52.5. Plus this 47% is still under 100, but the second I go over 100%, it's just going to, or even just for this one by itself, if I say, hey, width of just this one, 75%, it's going to drop down there because it's just too much. But that is what I want though. So I'm going to ditch this, and I'm just going to refresh this page here and just start writing some CSS here. So here we got our floating section, and I want my floating text, this guy. I want that to be, the width on that, let's say I want it to be 40%. And then I'll just copy this and change this text to image. That'll be this guy. Let's say I want that guy to be 80%. I'll save that and refresh my page. And the way I have this set up is I just have this I have the CSS set up to where it's just feeding right into, I'm using local by Flywheel, and so I'm actually just in the local folder right next to all my files here. I have this floating CSS. So whenever I update this, it's basically the same as like uploading it to the server. So that's why it's just pulling it in right away. The 40% looks a little small, so I'm going to go maybe 60% on that. And the 80%, I like the 80%. That's a good. There we go. That'll be cool. Okay, and so again, there might be a better way to do this. Like I tried messing around with negative margins and stuff like that. The problem was with the negative margin, I could get it up there to the top, I could say, margin top minus 300 or whatever, and then I could say, margin right negative 100, and maybe I have to, or maybe just right negative 100, and it started to kind of do it, but it wasn't happening quite like I wanted it to, because even if I said right 0, it wasn't going all the way over to the right to fill my my row here. My row goes all the way over to here, and so I decided to use some positioning to help make this happen. And so I'm going to set both of these to absolute positioning. And when you set something to absolute positioning, it will position itself based on the parent. Let me go ahead and refresh this. So the parent of this item, it'll position itself to the parent, the next parent that has a relative positioning. So, which is probably either this floating row or the actual section. Let me see here. Where's my computed? Oh, I see. When you have it this way, you lose the computed. Or, oh no, it's right here. Okay, killer. So positioning, position relative. There, you see it there. So our row here has a position of relative on it. And so when I say position absolute, and for example, for this floating text, I'm going to say, left 0, it's going to go all the way to the left of that row that's holding it. And if I say right 0, this is going to go all the way over to the right. So let's see what happens here. Okay, but you see a couple unintended consequences. Number one is that when you position stuff absolutely, it takes it out of the document flow, and so it thinks there's nothing in this section, and that's why the footer's coming up. And so we'll fix that here with a little bit of, let's do floating row. I'm just going to give it a min height of like 600 pixels for the time being. There we go. I probably could have done 500 actually. Good enough. We'll put 520 in there. And then my text is behind my image, but that's an easy fix. We're going to use some z-index for that. So for the text, I'm going to give it a z-index of 999, and for my image, I'll just put the z-index one below that at 998. Save that, refresh, boom. And so now I can say, hey, let me see here. I think I want to go back to 50% on my floating text, and I'm going to give it a little bit of space up top. So we'll say left is 0, top we'll say, we'll try 50 pixels here. Yeah, not even close to enough. But now I can go in here and say, well, how about 250? Too much? Depends on what effect you're going for. Looks like 115 is about right. And then I'm just going to give this text a box shadow of like 00120 and probably a background of like black at like 20%. And I think I'm going to copy this for the image as well. There we go. So we get that kind of Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice you're going to be like, well, John, using the min height deal, and using pixels in the positioning, it's not going to work with when I get more than this much text in there. Like, what's going to happen when they add in more text than they should? And so, yeah, this technique is not going to work well if the client's going to come in and edit this stuff. For these guys, they're going to give us probably 2 paragraphs. I'm going to go in, and once they do, and it's their final content, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to adjust this to fit exactly what they have. And then they're probably not going to change this text very often. If they do, then I might have to deal with it or not. Or if you see here, when they drag it in and it goes down like this, that's actually kind of cool. I like that. So I'm fine with it doing that. And I think ours is going to do something similar here. So if I refresh this page now, that we added the extra text, that kind of a deal, it coming off the bottom like that, and then I would just have to, I'd have to adjust the minimum height on that. Is something that I could, I can definitely live with that approach. Here we go, div ID floating row. In this case, maybe it would be 600, instead, or something like that. So I'm actually fine with that. That look is pretty sweet. But I'm going to go back in here and take this out. And like I said, there might be a better way to do this. Probably, maybe even using flex or grid or something. But for this particular client, this is how I did it. So actually, I'm going to go now and just make some adjustments for mobile. So let's just pretend that. Let's go in here and turn this guy on. And maybe even, let me see here. Let me go here to this guy. You could always try a percentage for the top, like 18 or something like that, and see how maybe that will fare better to what you're doing. But if it was me, what I would do, let me clear that out. What I do is I usually start at the main laptop thing here. Okay, that looks killer, looks great. And I go down to this next one. All right, that still looks pretty good. I mean, I can get a little nitpicky. Actually, I'm going to get a little nitpicky here. So actually what I would do normally is get this guy out. Oh, remind me later. I would get my little ruler guy out here. And I would say, okay, that's about 86 there. And this is 83. So it could actually come up a little bit, so maybe a couple. So like instead of 113, probably 113 is probably more the official. Yeah, that's probably where it's really at. So 113 here. Okay, great. So then when I go down here, it looks like it came down a tiny bit. So let's take a look. So yeah, still about the 80, 85. That looks good. And then this guy is going to be, yeah, not so much. So probably down 10. And that's at 1280. So probably at 1300. Grab this guy. So probably like maybe even 100. Let's see here. You know, 103 looks about right, so I'm going to use that. And then I usually come in to about 1200. And like I said before, if you have the exact text, then no big deal, because you just have to do this one time. But if that text is going to change a lot, I probably wouldn't do this type of section for this, unless I found a better way to do it than what I'm doing now. Because usually I just go in 100 pixels at a time. Now eventually it's going to not make sense to do it. Eventually it's going to, it's going to, and we're at weird sizes right now. Like, we're not using the regular sizes, the high definition or this laptop. Now we're at a device of 1130, so like, who really is looking at like this? But I'll still make adjustments for this size, just to make minor little tweaks as it goes in case someone does decide to shrink their browser or whatever. So 64 looks about right there. And I'm being picky. I'm really going 100 pixels at a time, like I said. So it's at 1,000, and then at 980, it's going to maybe 50 there at 1,000. Or yeah, this needs to be 1,100 here. And then I'm just gonna give myself some space. This one's gonna be 1,000. And then I usually go down to 981 because that's the last one right before it breaks to the regular one. And I'm actually 981. I'm actually gonna start. I'll actually push it down a little bit. Maybe like, that's a little much. Maybe like this, something like that, like 75 or 80. 80 looks good. So actually, I'm gonna make that sooner. I'm gonna do that at a 1,000 here. At 1,000, I'm gonna stop the whole, keep it in the center, and start moving it toward this approach. Or no, I'm not. No, I'm not. There's too much space up here and over here. I'm not a fan of that. So let me. There we go. Actually, that's good. Let's go to 980. And then this is where Divi does the whole breaking thing. And what I like to do here is I'm going to push this guy down, and then I'm going to bring it in on the edges, so that's not the exact same width. I mean, what you could do is you could just undo the absolute positionings. At this point, you have a couple options. You can either undo your absolute positioning and just have it like that, and then just put some space between it like you normally would and go for it. That's a choice. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep using what we have. And one thing I do want to do is, by default, when this guy gets smaller, the image is going to go underneath the text. I actually want the image to come first, so I'm going to use a little bit of switching code that we have as well here, and it's called we call it the 2-column switch, but I'm just gonna, it's at 980, and I'm basically gonna tell my row here, my floating row, hey, when you get down to 980, switch the 2 columns. That way my image will be first, and not the text. So yeah, so let's see here. Which back here, it's not going to make much of a difference, but okay, so now I can go in here and say, all right, let's grab the text now, and let's give it a, maybe like a top of 4, maybe like 390, and then the width of this guy, we're going to say 90%. and I have to import that. And then we're going to say margin left is auto, and I have to import that as well. And then margin right, auto. Actually, I think I misspelled margin there. I did. Yeah, like so. All right, let's do that. That should be centering it. I don't know why it's not. Let's just do floating row, or floating text, and I'll just, to make this even more specific, I'll just say floating row. And then I'll paste in those values that we had there. Top. Great. And while I'm at it, I need to give the floating row a bigger min height. We'll do 800 for now. Okay, let me see here. Let me see what I did wrong. So here is our floating image. And then this is our floating text. Oh, I probably have to tell this guy. Yeah, top 0 now, because we switched up. We switched the. We never told our image to go to the top 0, but we'll tell it to do so now. Great. And then I guess with this guy, let's try top like 450. And then actually, I think I could just say width is 90%, margin left is going to be 5%. And I might have to import in that. We'll find out. Or just left. That's why it's not working, because we told it up here. We told it up here we were telling it to go left 0 up here. So now we're going to say left 5%. All right, I see. And I wanted to go the opposite way with my top. Let's do 350 there. Sorry, this is like I said, I had to figure this out yesterday, and it's kind of a newer thing. So 350, I'm not feeling that. Let's do like 300 maybe. Maybe go down here. I kind of want it centered-ish. Close enough, 320. And for some reason, I really like to have like round numbers like in 5. So 320, I'm going to go with that. 320. And then my height of 800 is too much. It's let's try 700, 600 is looks about right. And then actually with that less, I would actually put more padding up there, but for the time being, so maybe 550 looks to be about right there, 550. Great. And now we just start going in. I'll go into 900, and you would do the same thing, like you have to decide, okay, do I want to keep this guy up here, or am I cool with that? I'm actually cool with that. We go down here to 800. At 800, it's it's almost off the edge here, so I'm going to bump it up a little bit more. So I'm probably going to bump it up to maybe 350, or sorry, bump it down to 280 maybe. Yeah, 280 looks pretty good. Or even, or maybe I can just say, hey, at this point I'm gonna go back to this kind of this area of like 235. So at 800, we're going to do 235. So at 800 here, just grab this guy, 235. And since I bumped that up, I could also, at this point, readjust my min height to maybe 500. Or, man, it looks like even more like 480 might be closer. So let me go ahead and grab this row thing. 480 we said. Okay, I should take care of that. Then we'll come in 100 more pixels to 700. That looks pretty good. Come into 600. 600 is one of the ones that I usually do refactoring at, so we'll do some of that here. So top maybe 200. Actually, we'll get that heading 1 in there. So like 180 looks about right. 600, 180. Change this guy to 600, 180. Oops, sorry, yes. Here we go. And then my min height can probably go down to like maybe 450 or something like in here, this area, 425. Let's just do 420. Great. Go down to 500. I'm fine with that. No, I'm not. I'm not fine with that. At 500, I'm going to do a couple things here. It's worth it in the end. In the end, it's worth it. So top, let's just bring it up again. Maybe to like there, like 150. I don't think it got it. Let me try it again. Oh, I'm at 504. That's why. 500. There we go. That looks good. And then we'll go down to, I believe, 415. So at this point, I can start dialing it into the, like the iPhone 6, 7, 8 Plus is 414. And so I'll make some adjustments here really quick at 414. That's kind of a major device. And at this point, I don't want to cover up too much of the image, so we'll just do 140 there. So 414. And I'm still happy with the min height there, so I'll get rid of that. And I didn't change the min height on that one, so we'll get rid of that. Refresh and see. All right, that's great. And then the iPhone 10 and 6, 7, 8 I think are like 375. Yeah. So we'll do some adjusting there. So maybe 125, so 375. And then 125 here on this guy. And then we're actually going to mess with our minimum height now, because it's getting kind of tight down there. So now we're going to set that at around 440, it looks like. Double check that, looks great. And then 6, 7, 8 is still 375. And I actually still do iPhone 5. So it's down at 320. And we already know we're going to have to do a couple of these guys. Oh, I would usually add more padding too. So that would probably change it a little. I forgot to go in here and under spacing, the padding for mobile, I usually bump that up to 7% to give it a more breathing room. And actually, I'm going to do that, make us legit. We're only got to refactor a couple things, so 7%, it just gives it a little more breathing room. Like that. All right, so let's see here. Let's go up here to about that number, which is, let's do 100. And then for our min height there, looks like it's going to be like 480 or something like that. Maybe 470. That looks good. Okay, and since I add that padding, I have to check those other mobile devices. So 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so it's a little off. I'll just have to raise this a little bit. So instead of 125, we'll go up to 120 here, and then we'll put our minimum height probably to add 5 there. So 120 and 120, and then add that 5 pixels right here to 445. That'll be good. And then our 6, 7, 8 plus 414. Probably have to do something similar, but probably a little more, like 10 pixels. Yep, 130. And then our row here is probably going to be 430, I would guess. Maybe 435. Close enough. 435, and what I say here? 130. And then 435. Let me copy this guy. 435. Save that. Refresh. That looks good. iPhone 10 is back at 375, and then we'll check out the iPad at 100% so I can really see it. And this is at 768. I don't think we did one for that. So yeah, we'll do one right here. 768. And let's move this guy. I'll move him down a little bit to where that heading is in between there. So 250, let's say. I'll just grab both of these ones. 250, and then our min height actually looks pretty good wherever it's at, so I'm going to leave it alone. And then we'll go back out to our responsive. Yep, and this is so you can see there at 767, it gets a little wonky too. So that's where Divi's mobile kicks in. So we'll have to make some adjustments, move this guy back up to like 235. So this is going to be 767. So I'm just going to copy this guy. 235, and I think that looks pretty good there. New issues here at 600. Yeah, because I changed that padding. So 600 will be 175. And we're almost done. maybe 430 on the. So you can see it's kind of dropping down there at 522. So sometimes I'll just, make this guy happen earlier at 550. And we're trying to be super exact, but I feel like what we have is pretty good. So let's pull this guy up to 100% here. So yeah, here's our desktop, and then going down, it keeps pretty well to what you wanted to do, especially on the major devices. If I say there, it looks great there. iPad, it looks solid. iPhone 10 looks great. 6, 7, 8 Plus, and you can add other devices if you'd like. And then the iPhone 5. So so if someone has a better way to do this, like I said, maybe using Grid or Flexbox, if you could post your method of doing this, that would be great. I'd love to learn that, because right now this is the only way that I know how to do it, and it works well. But the only sucky thing about it is that it doesn't really change well with how much content is here. But anyway, this is how I would do it right now until I learn a better way. I did take a Flexbox course, like a 2-hour course last week, and maybe I just need to refresh that and see how this could happen with that or something. But all right, guys, thanks again, and check out BeSuperfly.com for amazing Divi child themes and plugins for Divi. And then if you want to break into web and become a full-time freelancer, check out our web course at breakintoweb.com. Again, this is John. Have a great day, y'all. I'll see you later.